welcome back. I know that we had a marathon, and it's just because that this group discussion was programmed for 1 hour, but these discussions that you're bringing forward may not come from other countries. So it's important that we are very exhaustive so that we deliver as a country. So our next question again, where does accountability for ending hunger lie now? Where should it lie, and how can it be strengthened?
How can it be strengthened?
Only the microphone is on your side.
Thank you. For me, I've used the analogy of the Holon. I don't know whether all of us know the Holon. Yes, that when we are saying accountability, we have to first draw the self in it. We are all accountable, like I earlier mentioned, that all of us are accountable. At that level, you're also accountable, but it goes to the community. So what is the community's role when it comes to ending hunger? Then, of course, the global, the universal, yes, all that. So we are looking at the government here, the policymakers, the implementers of these policies. What are they doing? But we are also entitled to monitoring their performance if they are fulfilling those commitments that they make. So for me, I feel that we are all accountable on the different levels. But then how can, I beg your pardon, the last question. How can it?
Where should it lie in, say, government, and how can it be strengthened?
Yeah.
It's lying wherever you have chosen.
Yes. How can it be strengthened? I think we need to strengthen our monitoring measures. Yeah, because that is where the gap is, the follow-ups on some of these commitments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chimera.
Very quickly, accountability to date is with the duty bearer, as required by the Constitution. Unfortunately, it is wanting. Now, how do we strengthen? I'm going to invert the pyramid, and the one leave it standing. Still, where we need to strengthen it is through government, ministries, departments, and agencies coordinating, all working together. That is the executive, the legislature, even judiciary now needs, because land grabbing and everything is now being decided in courts and everything. So even judiciary needs to come in. They will not decide cases when they are hungry. So having brought that as we strengthen, then I'm bringing in the other aspect of the farmer. Then farmers also need to be accountable because some of the practices can lead to hunger. Private sector has a role to play. Then as the consumers, we do bring a lot of aspects with regards to food loss and waste and unsustainable consumption patterns. Then we need to go at the continental level.
The African Union.
The African Union. What are the aspirations for Africa within the global dispensation? Then the global agenda.
And then the regional economic community.
Yes, because those are under the AU currently. When you look at the discussions, I'm supposed to be in the negotiations now. We are looking at the REX, but under the AU. So that's why I'm bringing it in. Now the global agenda, like the summit on hunger. So this is where we need to strengthen and make them all accountable by making sure the consumers are not hungry and they get sustainable, safe, nutritious, and healthy diets.
Thank you so much, Agnes.
Well, thank you. International human rights law accords responsibility to our government and duty to protect, to promote. I said by international human rights law, Uganda is a signatory to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And in that regard, the government of Uganda has a duty to protect, to promote, and to fulfill the right to adequate food for all in Uganda. And within the UN framework, government is accountable to the Agenda 2030, where under SDG 2 specifically, obliged to end hunger by 2025. We are in 2023. We are in 2022. So 3 years down the road, we need accountability. Under the African Union, within the framework of the Malabo, CAADP Malabo Declaration, commitment number 3 on ending hunger, it was very specific, ending hunger by 2025. They adopted the commitment in the SDG. So in that case, we are expecting dear government of Uganda to account to us, but also to account by the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda 1995 as amended, where government committed itself to say that there is nobody sleeping hungry in this country, and that shall ensure, among others, establish national food reserves. So we need accountability. But also the rights holders, the consumers, we also have to account for our actions, our food choices that we make, and our food decisions that we make, and especially the food decisions we make for the vulnerable people, the children, the prisoners, the refugees, those that cannot decide on what they need to eat. So everybody has a duty to account and to account for our decisions. What we need to be done, we need to intensify food education, such that we influence people's decisions on the food choices they make, on the production practices they choose to make, but also in the other practices and decisions that we make that affect other people's, the quality and safety of other people's food. The farmers that spray hazardous chemicals to induce drying of the grains at the start of the season, the hazardous chemicals that we use in the farming system, the milking of the animals after injecting them hormones without retention. Same applies to the poultry, the excessive hormones that we inject the birds, the hormones we give the pigs and other animals. So we really need to intensify education and this aspect of accountability, because once unsafe food gets into our system, it is unsafe to all of us. You may never know where you're going to find it next yourself.
Thank you very much. Yes, Florence.
I'll comment on one aspect. The government is responsible for accounting to us, and I'm going to just limit myself to the Constitution, where they promise us that we shall have food security and that the government will provide healthy diets to the people, and they'll make all ways to make sure that people know how to make healthy food choices. However, as a country, we don't have the food-based dietary guidelines. I am aware that there's a team that is drafting that document. It's a document done in a language that everyone can understand, as long as you can read, and it can be translated into different languages to guide people on how to make food choices, healthy food choices. So it is my request, or it is academia's request, it is all of us, we request that the government expedites the drafting of the food-based dietary guidelines, and they should be disseminated widely so that all of us know what to eat, when, how, to avoid the situation we just faced with COVID-19. People didn't know how to preserve their immunity, yet it is very simple, eating enough fruits and vegetables. But without the food-based dietary guidelines, we are in darkness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I'll add a voice to that.
Okay, at the risk of repeating everything my colleagues have said, the accountability is on every actor, every relevant actor in the food chain. Like they've mentioned, the consumer, the farmer, us, the development agents, government ministries and authorities, the global power holders, all these, it lies there. The problem is the accountability systems. Some of us, some of the other actors would like to be accountable, but where are the systems? Where are the monitoring systems Maureen mentioned? How do I become accountable? Where do I go when I want to be accountable? That is what needs to be strengthened to make the system
Thank
better.
you so much, Ruth, and picking up from where you're talking, I think it's also for us to strengthen the gaps that you have highlighted. I think as civil society, we need to work with government. We complement government. We need to present ourselves as trusted and credible partners. We need to align our programming with government interventions and the National Development Agenda. We also, as civil society, need to support government, particularly the local governments where the grassroots people come to build their capacity. Retooling is very important. Data collection and ensuring that the data is disaggregated according to the vulnerabilities. So as civil society, we have a very great role to play.
Yeah.
Especially, we need to prioritize our programming to local governments because
Yes.
that's where the farmer is. And if we support where the farmer is and also leverage the parish development model that is trying to domesticate the SDGs, that is trying to respond to Agenda 2040, then I think everything that we're talking about in relation to gaps here will be strengthened.
Yeah.
Financial support to local governments, expertise. We civil society have all the technical support and resources. And if we coordinate ourselves as civil society and harmonize at local government and
Yes.
minimize the duplication of effort, accountability will be obvious. Thank you very much. With that said, colleagues, if you could make one recommendation to someone in power that you think would allow us to achieve zero hunger, what would you recommend and to whom would you make that recommendation? If you could make one recommendation to someone in power that you think would allow us to achieve zero hunger, what would you recommend and to whom would you make that recommendation? Yes, Mr. Shmera.
The single recommendation I would make is sustainable investment in the agri-food systems. And I would put it to the fountain of the owner so that his conscience wakes up and puts on the lens that will provide investment in sustainable food systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you. Yes, for me, my single recommendation would be, would of course go to Ministry of Education, where I'm calling them upon to reinstate agriculture to be compulsory from all forms of education.
Thank you. Agnes, as academia prepares,
Okay. I would appeal to the executive and indeed its head to streamline the policy, legal and institutional framework for food and nutrition in Uganda, to be able to galvanize and mobilize investment and financing. To the global leadership, I appeal for streamlining financing and investment for food and nutrition, especially in the South, the most affected continents and places of hunger and malnutrition, without stampeding the policy space for the governments out there to undertake context-specific decisions.
thank you very much. Florence.
Thank you. I have a huge recommendation that cuts across some sectors.
Please.
So we've talked about malnutrition issues, they are multi-sectoral. But I'm going to pick on the trade ministry, the education sector, and the health sector. So I'm going to request that all the trade agreements that Minister of Trade signs or the government signs should be made public. In there are clauses that have sold our health. So we are trading at the expense of our health. We are allowing investments in Uganda at our own expense. I will not mention organizations, but that is clear. The second one, okay, related to that, I want to appeal to Minister of Health to expedite the nutrition policy drafting. Whether it's Minister of Health, whether it's Minister of Agriculture, whether it's OPM, wherever that new policy is, we request you to expedite and let it be enacted for us to be able to have a food and nutrition bill. Related to that, I request that since government signed to many global initiatives to regulate marketing of unhealthy food to children, I request that we actually reform our policies and also put in place structures to regulate unhealthy food advertising to our children and to the whole public at large. Thank you very much.
Ruth, over to you. We have about 6-7 minutes to the end of the session.
Okay. I will direct it to government. That is the ministries, the authorities, and the policymakers. And this is, we are Uganda, the people. We are the solution. We have the solutions. Let's bring our ears back to the people, to us, and listen to us, and act upon the solutions that are being suggested. And then the other solutions that are external can be an addition to the solutions that we have ourselves. So let's listen to our people. Let these authorities, ministries, and policymakers listen to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're now going to action. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do the global community's current approaches or investments to ending hunger address underlying inequalities? How could this be better addressed? On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do the global community's current approaches or investments to ending hunger address underlying inequalities? How could this be better addressed? Agnes.
I would put it at 5. The fact being that the same intentions grow the gap instead, as their decisions are grabbed or they are taken up by those that want to reap profit and make margins out of it, and then they do it at the cost of the vulnerable and the most hungry, while they are rewarding their capital and using that reward to even take away the little that the vulnerable have, the land that the women have, the seed that they were controlling, the water resources they have been controlling. So it's a 50, there is still that other 5 to work on.
Thank you. And how could this be better addressed?
I have already said it, that let our governments be left policy space to define own decisions that are context-specific, design context-specific programs, because what may work in Uganda may not work in Ghana may not work in Ethiopia, may not work in the same way in Burkina Faso. Even if it is a global kind of decision or initiative, but our government, it should not be a one size that fits all, because it cannot fit all. We are not in an homogeneous scale. So we need to be given space to interpret and redesign those initiatives within our own specific context, and B, that they strengthen the vulnerable and not instead taking away from them, but also lessen the so many layers through these initiatives come through that make them so clean but very little when you eventually get to the levels they are supposed to impact.
Thank you so much. Mr. Shimera.
Let's cut the miles.
Yes, I put it at 4. With the limited knowledge I have, all visual actions that I see, I put it at 4. And how to change the narrative is by walking the talk. Action. And action shouldn't be global. It can be facilitated globally, but worked on locally by wiping away, investing in those actions to wipe away the inequalities. Thank you.
Maureen.
Thank you. I think I would put it at 3. Reason being that most times we are putting funding, for example, the funding we are putting in, for example, for the things that we want to create an impact for a lifetime, you want to give it a peanut, but you want to achieve something big. That there are projects that they initiate or we initiate that require long-time funding and capacity building. So, and agriculture is one of them. So for me, I give them a 3. And what can be done, of course, to come back and negotiate with the people who are implementing, the real implementers of this, who understand the real issues on the ground, to understand how best we can push this forward. Instead of us waiting, and then someone says, this is what I have, go with that. But what is your position? But also to start thinking in an enterprising way of how we are going to handle some of our issues, not to wait for the global powers to come for our rescue, because we have the powers to do that.
Thank you. Ruth, and I'll also contribute.
Okay, I could begin. I'll give it a 5. Why I'm giving it a 5 is because I agree with the other side, where the profit-oriented people are bringing in approaches that are not favorable for the farmer. Investment is not enough towards the causes. But then, on the other side, we need to appreciate some of the approaches and investments made. Number 1, women empowerment. Women empowerment, that's where I'm giving it a 5, the 5 on the other side, the positive side. There have been so many approaches around the world where focus on women empowerment has been really, really a major issue. And that has, we've seen some positives within the country, within Uganda, within Africa, around the world. So that and the approaches and the investments, the other 5. Then the platforms to listen. We've had summits, we've had workshops, we've had these platforms, a number of platforms in the effort of listening to the people. And that's where I would say the approaches and investments would be, I would scale it at 5. Thank you very much.
Yes, Florence.
Thank you so much. I'm scoring it at 5. As far as academia is concerned, we really appreciate the funding extended to do research. However, in Uganda, we have very little information published on these nutrition problems. And when you're setting policies, you use evidence that is already in the public domain. Yeah. So I appreciate the fact that also our government has woken up and they are funding research, so we could generate local data that can inform our policies. So while the funding is extended globally from those global sponsors, Most times it comes with the set direction of or the set themes of the research. And you may find that we are going to research into things that have been done, or we are going to get whatever has worked elsewhere and come and do it in Uganda, yet the context matters, the policy cycle matters, and so, yeah, we still have those challenges. That's why I gave them a 5.
Yes, thank you so much, Florence. Speaking on from you, I would also put it at a 5 because nutrition in Uganda is donor funded. When you look at our budget and look at our commitment to the Malabo Declaration ending, starting by 10%, we are let me talk about 2019, we're at 6%. Well, of course, we are called to be on track. So I'll put it at 5%. The gap here is that our funding is not to the needs of the local people of Uganda. It is to address the needs of the donor. I give it 5% because it also focuses on maternal and child health. Now, when I go to the refugees, with the reduction of food rations, I am coming from the field where the mother care groups are telling us that we are sensitizing women on preventing and managing malnutrition, but our own children are stunting. Since WFP reduced food, we are now having 1 meal a day. We are used to having rain in March. Rain is starting in April. We are food insecure. We've been given seeds, but OPM has not added land. Then let's go to the Ukraine war. The money for East and the whole of Africa, the donor money has been redirected to Ukraine. What does that mean for us in humanitarian response? 40% of the WFP food comes from Ukraine. So, as a country whose nutrition is donor dependent, we are saying we need donors to align their funding to the real food and nutrition needs of Ugandans. We need donors to retool and capacitate government. We need our government to ensure that every district has a nutritionist, every health facility where the women of maternal and child of reproductive age go to can access a nutritionist and can access a midwife. That is the reason for my 5%, and we applaud the global community for its support. But those gaps need to be addressed if we are to achieve food safety and nutrition security. What are the 2 to 3 key approaches or actions that we know work well to reduce hunger? What limitations have they faced, and what support would be needed to do more or better? What are 2 to 3 key approaches or actions that we know work well to reduce hunger? What limitations have they faced, and what support would be needed to do more or better? Agnes Chirabu.
I'm going to talk about our traditional integrated production system, which was criminalized, demonized, and decampaigned, but was giving our food system stability, but also sovereignty. It was giving our food system diversity, and it is weak. It has been weakened over time. It's because of this kind of production system that the poor were not malnourished. It's because of this production system that the production was sustainable even within shocks, because some enterprises were more resilient than others, and others were also rejuvenating, because we are talking also about regenerative kind of production system. So for me, that approach worked so well. It works, and only what we need to do is to see how it is being supported with technology to improve its scale, to lessen its labor drudgery, but it is one production system that can give the world safe, healthy, and nutritious food. We cannot look and search for a diverse diet, a balanced plate in a monoculture production system. So for me, that one worked. The second thing, because you asked for 2 or 3, I'm going to give you 2. That systemic governance system that was running from central to local level, where the local governments were actually responsible for ensuring that there is food and nutrition security. They were doing surveillance. Food and nutrition was the heart of the traditional parish development model, and it worked, because we know a hungry household does not invest. A hungry household, even when it borrows from pillar number 7, they will eat the money. If they don't eat the money as food, they're going to eat the money as medicine. So strengthening that food governance structure from the national level to the local government, and communities really being empowered to do food first and everything later.
The beauty is Agnes has said the 2. I'm going to put the 3rd, because I strongly believe in the 2 you have shared. The 3rd I'm bringing in is the cooperative movement cherish, which I call the mutual partnership. Should I repeat? I repeat or I continue? So I'm going to just give one which will touch a lot. The cooperative movement approach of production, which brought, or which brings about mutual partnership of the cooperators, which gives them sovereignty, pride, livelihood, income, bargaining for that requisite price that we cherish to see driving and transforming our communities, providing the social net, safety net, and it was still linked to our culture. If I give the example of the Buganda Kingdom, bringing in the element in Nimiro ya Habaka, in Nimiro ya Nabagereka, it was providing food security, sustainability, resilience. You would touch that garden with the authority of the king, knowing that the area there is hunger. You should have the store where you should keep the portion of your food in the name of the king, but it is for your own benefit. Thank you.
Maureen, what are you doing to help the women? Reduce hunger. What approaches?
Did you ask what approaches we are using, or the approaches that we are using that we want to continue?
What are the 3 key approaches or actions that we know work well to reduce hunger in the context of Uganda? What limitations have they faced, and what support will be needed to do more or better? To do them more or better?
Yeah, my neighbor, actually, it's like he was seeing what I was writing here.
Those are classic things.
No, no, for real. I'd written already. Yeah, yeah, but it's okay because it was food cooperatives.
Yes.
And my example was I'd put Busoga growers, for example, because my Jaja was leading, that cooperative. So for me, that was one of the approaches. I will not go into details because he has already alluded to, the entire explanation. So one, there is, you help me to get the right word, the community digging. How can it be? Like, we collect ourselves and say today we are going to Mariam's garden, yes, to weed and what.
Communal weeding and harvesting.
I think those approaches were really very good. But now the challenge is that everything has been monetized, like we say. I cannot come to your garden if you haven't paid me money. For me, that is one. Then the other is providing the inputs. The inputs, yes, because currently, as we see, for example, my mother was calling me, she needs money for seeds to plant. So you know where we are heading. That every season, after season, you have to buy. You have to keep on buying and buying. Yet you cannot, even when you sell what you have bought, it cannot even lead you to buy other seeds. So for me, that, but also safeguarding our traditional, those crops that grown, yes, the indigenous plants or crops, seeds, all those, I think to be better.
Yes. And returning to the granary system, as the microphone moves. Yes, Ruth is ready for you. Yes, Ruth.
I'll give you one approach
Yes,
that I
please.
strongly believe in: agroecology.
Yes.
Agroecology. Now, there are principles against which, I would call them elements, against which agroecology runs. There is diversity. I won't repeat diversity because Agnes really explained this very well.
Yes.
She also talked about culture and social values. Yes? I won't talk about that. But there are issues of co-creation of knowledge. That has been my message from the beginning. Listen to the researcher, listen to academia, listen to the farmer, listen to everyone who has the knowledge. There are issues of efficiency. I've been talking about self-reliance of the producer. There are issues of secular and solidarity of the economy, whereby I had this issue of focusing on the producers, the women, and empowering them in terms of land access and control. That issue has been talked about. Focusing on them in terms of access to information, because they are the producers and we all appreciate that. And then motivation is a major issue in terms of reward, profitable markets, the abuse, the stories you hear, she sold but the husband took the money. Let's focus on those. So my main point would be agroecology because of the principles against which it runs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Florence.
Thank you so much. I will give you my response with an example. One of my colleagues at the School of Public Health just completed his PhD, and he assessed policies that prevent maternal mortality. And one of his papers is titled "The Actor is the Policy." And in there, he explains how policies are set as far as those health sector is concerned. And my issue here is that we need to use the bottom-up approach to reforming our policies. When we listen to the farmer, as my colleagues have been saying, when we listen to the private sector, when we listen to the cooperatives, all the different groups that are trying to improve our health, we need to make sure that what they point out as issues, then we should use that information to shape our policies. So those kind of policies will control trade liberalism and globalization. Our villages are not going to be exploited by Coca-Cola. Our villages are not going to be exploited by Safi. You know, deep down in the village, there is that little drink called Safi. The mother is giving her child Safi instead of a sweet potato to take to school. And those who can afford too much Safi, they are giving their children 2 or 3 of those bottles, and the children are consuming too much sugar and getting fat. Yeah, we still have obese people deep down in the villages. So when we listen to the people and do policies that will direct our research, then we are going to have context-specific data that will help us to improve our well-being nationally. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. What are 2 to 3, maybe to contribute in humanitarian response, working with OPM and also the host communities? We have introduced what we call optimum land use models, where refugees have kitchen gardens so that they are able to have fresh food. And these foods, we encourage them to grow their traditional food, and we are promoting them we're encouraging them to use their traditional ways of preventing and managing malnutrition. So that approach is a great approach to support the food aid. I always call food aid tired food on transit. So it's great to have fresh feed. I was in Kiriandongo in Maji 2 refugee settlement, and I was very excited to pick the cherry tomatoes, not sprayed, very organic, and just eat them. So I think we need to promote that so that we're able to have dietary diversity and a nutritious food basket around the gardens. And also for the schools, we need to promote the homegrown school feeding so that our children are able to have food at school. Ladies and gentlemen, what are 2 to 3 key approaches or actions not working well to reduce hunger? Why do you believe they are not working? And why do we keep doing them? What are 2 to 3 approaches or actions not working well to reduce hunger? Why do you believe they are not working? And why do we keep doing them? I know we all have answers. We've answered some. This time Florence Academia is itching to answer.
Set policies to the national context, right? But some countries just copy clauses and put in their policies, and so we find it very hard to implement those policies. Therefore, our people stay hungry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Agnes, you're picking up from copy and paste. We are known to have very good policies that are taken by other countries. 2 to 3.
Our policies actually are not very good.
That's what they are saying.
It is the English that is good,
Thank you
but the
very
policies
much.
are not good.
So,
But that is not what I wanted to
approaches
talk
that are
about.
working well.
It is speaking from Florence.
Yes.
It is exactly, we copied and pasted private sector aid and privatization of our food system,
Yes.
and that one has not worked. It's because of it that we are now struggling with rebuilding our agriculture extension system, because we had taken it on demand driven under NADS. We privatized the input distribution sector. We privatized literally everything, including the food market. And this side of the world, we think that subsidizing a farmer is obscene, when actually, in actual sense, farming and food production is not productive, is not profitable. It is only that the product of it is needed and badly needed, which is food. And that is why developed economies are subsidizing their farmers to sustain production. So for me, what we did wrong is copying privatization, the privatization policy, and privatized our agriculture and production system here in Uganda. It has not worked. That is why we privatized our food reserves. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked.
And
even government is a victim. That is why we have seen government programs giving farmers poor seeds, seeds that do not germinate, pesticides that are not impactful. Even government itself, I think it was after the Northern Uganda War, and Office of the Prime Minister gave punks that were soft as banana fibers. So nobody has not been a victim. I mean, has not, everybody has been a victim. So for me, that one has not worked. It is not going to work. It will never work. And how do we want to change it? The opposite is that we need the role of the state well defined and significant in ensuring that production of food is done sustainably, access to food is sustainable, and safe, health, and nutritious diets are available. And in any case, there are remedies and justice can prevail, because there is a lot of inequality and there is a lot of injustices and unfairness in the food system, but they are all falling through the cracks of the privatization that we cannot regulate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would like to I would like to start with an opener of the narrative, one size fits all.
Yes.
That was the worst and still it's the worst. And we are tending to continue with it. Then number two, I talked about it earlier, the liberalization of the pricing of agricultural commodities at the farm gate. What needs to be done is, can we go back and put requisite pricing for agricultural commodity at the farm gate, so that the farmers benefit and get incentives to produce. The downsizing of extension service provision was crime against agriculture or food production. So reinvesting in it, recruiting, and making it a fully fledged agricultural service provision system to provide and put out requisite information, and not criminalizing the agriculture that we go for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Ruth is ready. We have about 3 minutes to end, finally.
Thank you. You will forgive me, my head is, the medicine is not working on me, so I keep on, that's why I keep on asking you what was the question. But yeah, I'm trying
Cancel.
to.
Not sitting, cancel.
Yeah, I think I know that. So, I'll go straight to the point of mechanization of agriculture. This is what I think we had been on for some time, government promoting mechanization of agriculture. But again, when you get back to our land issues, there is a lot of fragmentation of land, that it can also not favor, that kind of system to happen. Yet, if we are to compete with other countries that are doing well in agriculture, you see where they are heading now. That you don't put in too much of your labor, this manual labor, and we are using the hand hoe, it is still on. So for me, I see that some of those things have to be checked and see how best can we get back to have that vast land where people can do mechanization, which is really streamlined. Like I'd already said, that if we go to cooperative venture, that we can go through the cooperatives and we secure the big land, and then we go mechanization, I think it will help us to chase the hunger out of our country. Then I think the access to information in line with agriculture is also a big gap. Most people don't have this information at hand, which can help us to, run through the radar to improve.
Thank you so much, Ruth Pella. We have only one question to go.
Okay. Two approaches
Yes,
that I
please.
believe are not working.
Yes,
I'll start with the less contentious one,
yes,
the seed system.
yes.
The seed systems where a farmer, for every season, when they need to plant, they are depending on an external supplier to provide them with seed, to sell them seed, to tell them this seed is good. I would suggest we go back, I've already mentioned this, to the community managed seed systems. That is number one. Now the contentious one. The commoditization of agriculture. Where the practice right now is, farmers will sell everything if it's maize, and then after they will go and buy a kilogram of flour at a much higher price. So the belief is that we are calculating wealth against cash, not against food. But my question will be, during COVID, those who had a lot of money and those who had a lot of food, who was richer at that time? The mindset that the richest is the one with money is not working out for Ugandans, is not working out for in helping fight hunger. We need to know where the actual wealth is.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Our last question is general. What has COVID-19, how has COVID-19 changed our understanding of hunger? To what extent do you believe that COVID-19 has or has not transformed our way of working to be more resilient against future crises? Why? How has COVID-19 changed our understanding of hunger? To what extent do you believe that COVID-19 has or has not transformed our way of working to be more resilient against future crises? Why? Agnes.
Foremost, the silver line in the darker cloud of COVID-19 is that one, COVID-19 revealed the fragility of our food system. It exposed that. And yet, everybody globally and locally wanted to go back and seek refuge in the food system, which was very, very fragile. But the bad thing about human nature is that we learn so fast and forget so fast. So we are likely to forget. But then something that has come naturally with COVID-19 is the reversal of some kind of the mindset, especially among the young people. Going back to eat things they were hating, they thought that they were not fast, because they want fast food, they pick a Rolex, they pick a Commando, they pick chips and run, and they call it fast foods. They went back to appreciate. You find young people eating things they used not to eat, that they used to call names. They don't taste nice, they are tasteless, they are doing all sorts of things. At least now they know that they are the source of life, and it is the reason that they survived. So that reversal back into, especially this side of Africa, that reversal back into appreciating our traditional food system. How we wish and how I wish that reversal in mindset translates into policy and programming that actually doesn't promote commoditization of our food system, but looking at promoting the diversity and the complexity of our food system, which is the flora, the fauna, the soil, the water, the herbs, and the whole diversity, because this is where we fell back to. So for that, I think, thank you, COVID-19.
Yes, Mr. Shibara.
I will also start by saying thank you, COVID-19. And I would say COVID did a comprehensive forensic test on all our frameworks. In fact, COVID showed us how naked we were and how dirty when we had just finished taking a shower, that we didn't shower well. Number two, still thanks to COVID, it showed us the haves and have-nots. As consumers, we are all vulnerable. So COVID had those positives, and it made it equalizer of us. I remember with the total lockdown, as we were in the village doing our physical exercising, a comment came in from a border rider who couldn't take out their motorbikes. Say, so and so is the one who passes us with windows up and driving very fast, and the whole of the dust lands on us. Now he's walking on these roads. So that shows how COVID equalized all of us. But the other thing that I would say that COVID, and I would like to refer to the Barefoot Pelham came with colleagues under agroecology, brought out. Food was the inner mask and still the inner mask. That was something. We have the outer mask, but food is providing us the inner mask where we are healthy, nutritious, and our bodies are fighting back. And also to lay more emphasis that things that we were shunning, the youth, the young consumers were shunning, are now falling in love with them because they sustained us. Lastly, COVID has provided the change of the paradigm and has brought about rethinking. And like Agnes has put, I pray, adding to that voice, that we wish what COVID exhibited, not the greed, but the thinking about the vulnerable. In whatever vulnerability we were in, to rethink consumer protection, to think food safety. Because unsafe food was making us more vulnerable. So, and now people are thinking and facilitating and showing that to end hunger, there is a need to protect the consumer of the food and to provide that consumer safe, healthy, and nutritious food that will facilitate their production and productivity.
Maureen, 1 minute and then we come to the ladies. Ruth is finished, she's done. Academia? You're done?
What is COVID?
Maureen, how has COVID-19 changed our understanding of hunger? To what extent do you believe that COVID-19 has or has not transformed our way of working to be more resilient against future crises? Why?
Thank you. From my institution angle, I would love to appreciate COVID. That at least people's eyes were opened that they can shop online. So with the market garden application, it kicked off. We had started it actually, but when COVID, came up, we said, people, the opportunity is here. So it started to work. And people were also in shock that market women can be online, especially those who are selling groceries, as you know, our markets. That there is that change and even appreciation that this is a serious team that we need. Market women were the essential service providers. So if they were not there, people, us who are staying in the urban areas, where would we have gotten food? Because the cars were not moving.
Yes.
So it brought that appreciation that these are serious people in the service industry, but also in the value chain, but also appreciating that without them, we cannot also survive as who are in towns.
Thank you so much. Florence.
Yeah. I'll take it.
So I'll take it on from the health perspective. COVID-19 helped a lot of people, those who were overweight and obese, to actually appreciate exercising. And so they were able to go back, some of them, those who worked hard were able to go back to their healthy weight for their height. And so they had to avoid being hospitalized if they got COVID. Yeah? And then the other issue is that what I appreciate about COVID-19 is that it taught us that we can actually live on less. You don't have to eat all the time. Yeah. So currently, people appreciate that when I go to a buffet, I am not going to be eating on every dish. No. And they appreciate the fact that they can eat one meal and maybe snack on fruits and vegetables throughout the rest of the times and stay healthy and be more productive. We also appreciate working at home in academia, so we give lectures. So we also do online interviews. So we appreciate working remotely, save on money for fuel, save on money for you save time when you sit in one place and work and you send your output. I also happened to participate in some policy activity where we drafted the UNAP 2 communication strategy and advocacy strategy. And I realized that actually you can do a lot remotely and you actually inform the nation. So I think those are some of the ways we are working differently and we are more productive and we are eating less, saving more, and trying to invest what we have saved to generate a household income. I think those are approaches that are going to help us a lot.
One thing that I could add
Yes.
in that regard, the babies enjoyed their mothers. Yes, the babies, the young, an opportunity to stay with their mothers and their watching over the frequency of the meals that they are being fed, the compositions of the meals, the diets that their children were having, but also that social nurturing. It was a great opportunity for us this side of Africa. Our food is part of culture, but also the mother care is part of the whole equation of nutrition, nourishing the child. So COVID-19 presented an opportunity for those women and for those children, but of course it put a burden to the providers of the households. We also appreciate that there is a great number of women who are the breadwinners of the households. So we don't rule out the issues of domestic violence that went at a hike. And we know that that also have impact on the psychological stability of growing children. They cannot enjoy their meals in a violent household, and therefore they cannot really even grasp the best nutrients in those menus because the families, some families were very unstable. But we also recognize that there are those households who really limited their diets not by choice, but because of the circumstances, because the sources of income were cut short. So we know that there are those that actually are going to reap malnutrition out of the limitations and the conditions that came with COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Agnes. And picking up from you, one of the things that I saw during COVID was that the majority of the Ugandans went back to the indigenous foods. I saw more vegetables. I saw more citrus fruits. I saw more ginger, more organic. Ugandans went organic during the time of COVID. Ugandans used more herbs. They went traditional. If there's a time I took more herbs and home remedies, local home remedies, it's not more than during the time of COVID. And we have continued, and I want to tell you that the time of the lockdown, up the time of the lift, we never went to hospital. It was mainly traditional food coming from home, and also it was the first time I actually had to walk from Mutungo to town and back on my feet. And I felt the physical activity, the exercise and everything. So, and then also the economical bit, people learned to share. I saw when they were giving food, I saw households saying, give that food, give this. So, and then also, there was saving. I saw people now go take churches, take mosques back to the house. And in terms of, I got to know my children better during COVID than ever. I was an absentee mother. So COVID really came with very positive things to many people, especially the working. The working, of course, the money, the cuts, the restructuring. But in terms of the social values and family unification, COVID did a great deal. With this said, colleagues, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Action Against Hunger to thank you for the very, very informative focus group discussion. It was meant, it was meant to have ended in 1 hour, but we have spent a good 3 hours and 2 hours and 50 minutes. I want to thank Aguta, Jamila, and Fred, and we're looking forward to receiving the raw and, first the raw, HQ wants both raw and edited material, and we want to thank you for being part or for representing Uganda in this global summit with all the great ideas and for centering to the real needs of our country and also contributing to the global discussion. Your time is much appreciated. We are committed as Action Against Hunger to the strategic partnerships, and we want to also extend our sincerest appreciation to Food Rights Alliance, our strategic partner and partner in many angles, for mobilizing you. And we're very grateful. We had expected to get about 10, but we're happy that we had 6 out of 10, and we had a representation from Honorable Victoria Sechiteleko, whom we all know was a former Minister of Agriculture, a former woman member of Parliament, a UN diplomat. So we started with a focus group discussion and a key format interview with her, which went on well. And we want to say thank you to you. Our finance team is here.